What if I told you that you can feel completely satisfied with this healthy, high-protein, gluten-free, and plant-based pasta dish? And it may look like a simple pasta dish, but you can feel guilt-free eating this because it is packed with nutritious ingredients. Did I make you hungry? Good. Now let me show you how to make it. So here is everything you'll need. If you're new to my channel, I am a single mom with 2 growing boys at home. I'm also a very busy mom with a very busy schedule. I mean, most moms are, right? So I do typically like to do ingredient prep or meal prepping during the weekends, and I usually make enough food for the 3 of us to last us a few days. So really, I like to make things easier for myself so I'm not spending so much time in the kitchen cooking every single night or every other night, because who has time for that? I sure don't. All right, back to the ingredients. So you're gonna need 1 butternut squash, some carrots, garlic, onion. It doesn't really matter what type of onion you use. Whatever onion you have at home is perfectly fine. I'm using a red onion, or what some people call purple onion. And you're gonna need a little lemon juice from a lemon wedge for some acidity in your pasta sauce. You're gonna need some tomatoes. I had these grape tomatoes. This is about 2 cups of them. You can use 2 large tomatoes if you want, or if you have Roma tomatoes. For this recipe, I'm using fresh sage and fresh rosemary, but you can use dried rosemary or dried sage powder. 1 can of pumpkin puree. You'll need some tomato paste, which we'll only use about 2 tablespoons of. I'm using Banza rigatoni pasta because it's made from chickpeas, so it's high in protein. You'll need 1 can of coconut milk. I use coconut milk, but if you're not a fan of coconut milk, use whatever plant milk you have or you like. Now, coconut cream is optional. I just like to add a little bit of some type of plant-based cream to make my sauce a little creamier. And for those who are new to my channel, I have been on a weight loss journey and have lost a significant amount of weight, but I'm still on my weight loss journey because I do have a little ways to go. 25 more pounds to go until I reach my goal weight, which is the size and weight I was before having my youngest son. Basically, I said all that to say that I no longer purchase sugar and no longer cook with it at home. And making that small, simple change in my lifestyle has contributed to my weight loss. So instead of sugar in this pasta sauce recipe, I'm using organic maple syrup. You'll also need some plant butter, some dried parsley, and I like to use Cajun seasoning because it has a bunch of seasonings that I already like. But if you don't like Cajun seasoning, feel free to just use crushed red peppers or cayenne pepper. I'm also using onion powder and garlic powder, and of course salt and pepper to taste. All right, so let's get into why this pasta sauce recipe is nutrient dense. Butternut squash is rich in important vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. It's a low-calorie, fiber-rich squash that has anti-inflammatory benefits, and it's also good for your gut. It is an excellent source of vitamins A, vitamin C, B vitamins, potassium, magnesium, and it's also good for your immunity because butternut squash is rich in beta carotene and alpha carotene, which is important for our immune system. So after washing and scrubbing my squash, of course, I cut the squash in half and placed all of my vegetables on a sheet pan to make it easier to just roast everything all at once. I'm drizzling some extra virgin olive oil on everything, including my rosemary and sage. Carrots are high in vitamin C and fiber, and they're also good for your immune system, and they also have anti-inflammatory properties. So after drizzling some extra virgin olive oil, I also sprinkled some salt and pepper and then placed the sheet pan in my oven to roast. But keep in mind that I will take the sage and rosemary out after a few minutes because 1, we're not really trying to roast them or burn them. You just want the natural oils to come out and infuse the extra virgin olive oil with rosemary and sage flavors. Also keep in mind that the butternut squash will take the longest to roast and cook all the way through. You're gonna cook the butternut squash and the carrots until they are soft and tender. So be prepared to remove the tomatoes, the garlic, and the onion after about 15 to 20 minutes once they're soft and tender. but you will leave the carrots and the butternut squash in to continue to roast until they are fully cooked. So while all of that is roasting in the oven, we're going to get our pasta started. I like to put salt and extra virgin olive oil in my pasta water. I understand that some people don't do that, and that's perfectly fine. Whatever you do that works for you, you keep doing that. So again, I like to use pasta that is high in protein, the Banza brand to be exact. Because I do live a plant-based lifestyle, it's very important to me that I incorporate plant-based protein in my diet. So you'll see me cook a lot of meals that are high in protein, specifically plant-based protein, of course. So what I like about the Banza brand of high protein pastas is that they are made with chickpeas, so they contain 50% more protein, 3 times more fiber, and 25% fewer net carbs than any of your other pasta brands. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that after just a few minutes, I like to take out my sage and rosemary after they've produced their natural oils, and their oils have infused the extra virgin olive oil. And we're not trying to burn them in the oven, because that will not taste good. And my high protein pasta is almost ready. We all know not to overcook our pasta, but to cook it al dente. All right, so as I mentioned before, the carrots and the squash will take the longest to cook, specifically the squash. So this is about at the halfway point. Once your onion, your garlic, and your tomatoes have softened, you can take those out and put them aside. And this is when I like to turn over my butternut squash before I pop it back in the oven to continue to roast all the way through. I don't know, in my opinion and experience, turning it over helps it cook all the way through. So that's what I'm doing here, turning the squash over, leaving the squash and the carrots to thoroughly cook and continue to roast. I did put aside everything else and really just put them right into my blender to prepare for my sauce. And this is when the squash and the carrots are finished roasting and cooked all the way through. So I'm turning the squash over to make sure that the squash is tender and soft. Then I'm just gonna let them sit for a few minutes to cool down before placing it all in the blender to make my sauce. All right, so then I just basically combine everything together in the blender to make my delicious, nutritious sauce. And I do want to mention that the pumpkin puree in the can is already pre-cooked. It actually has been steamed already, so there's no need to cook the pumpkin puree unless you want to heat it up before blending it in with your sauce. It's entirely up to you. So I put my pumpkin puree in, then my roasted garlic and tomatoes and my onion, then my sage and rosemary, and this is about 2 tablespoons of plant-based butter. And then I added in my roasted carrots and scooped out my roasted squash, and also added that into the blender. Then my 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, 1 can of coconut milk. And in addition to that, I also added in about 1/4 cup of coconut cream and lemon juice from a lemon wedge for some acidity. And then all of my seasonings, garlic powder, onion powder, dried parsley, Cajun seasoning, and of course salt and pepper to taste. You can always adjust the salt and pepper to your desired taste. So then I just blended everything up to make my creamy, delicious sauce. And at this point, you can always modify your sauce. If you prefer your sauce to be thinner, you can go ahead and add in more plant-based milk. But if you're like me, which I prefer my sauce a little on the thicker side because I don't like runny sauce, I like this particular sauce to be thick and chunkier because I like my sauce to stick to my pasta. I am not trying to slurp up pasta sauce / soup off my plate. So to me, this is the perfect consistency. You see how it's just thick and creamy enough so that the sauce sticks to the pasta, because you want some of that delicious sauce in every bite. And I think it's also worth mentioning that After my two boys and I had this pasta for dinner, we still had a lot of this sauce left over, and I was able to fill these two large wide mouth mason jars. These are about, I believe, 32 ounces each. So I had quite a bit left of this delicious, nutritious sauce, which was more than enough for dinner for the three of us for the following day. And we still had one jar left over. So I'm storing that extra jar in the fridge, and that jarred sauce will be good for about 2 weeks in the fridge. And of course, always make sure that your sauce is completely cooled down first before placing their airtight lids and refrigerating them. And boom, that is it for my healthy, delicious, gluten-free, high-protein, plant-based butternut squash pasta that's not only delicious, but it's also nutrient-dense, so it will do your body good, and I promise your kids will love it too. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and you might want to check out these other videos on my channel.